Okay, guys, for this demo today, you are going to need a paper, something to attach it to, some tape, some painter's tape, salt, your watercolors, a brush, and some water. Okay, those are the things that you will need for this demo today. You're first going to tape all the way around using your painter's tape. And I usually get excess tape so that it goes all the way down. Oh, and I guess you'll also need a pencil. Okay, so I've now taped it all the way around the piece of paper. All right, that is my goal, is to make sure that the entire thing is shut. All right, so what you're gonna do is you're going to write Watercolor Notes Day 1. I'm writing with pen so that you can see it better. However, I would like you to write with a pencil, just in case if you make a mistake, and because this pen is not waterproof. So you want to make sure that you're using something that isn't going to bleed through your notes. I'm then going to divide this like so. I'm going to put like a little line right here to divide the top. And then I'm going to divide this in half right here. And then I'm going to make 5 sections for both sides. So there will be 10 boxes. Like so. And then I'm going to take some notes. So the first thing we're going to write down is that we are doing a flat wash. Then we are going to do layering. After that, we are going to do glazing. Then we're going to do wet on wet. And then salt resist. So these are, well, this is a wash technique. This is combining colors technique. And then these are wet on wet techniques right here. So that's what we're going to be doing today. A flat wash is basically a solid color that covers a large area, and it's usually very light rather than dark. So we're going to create a flat wash, and to do that, you are going to take the brush and take some water. And I know my watercolors are very disgusting over here. This is how I keep my palette. But I'm going to use one of the colors over here. But you would take, like, say, for example, blue. A flat wash is sometimes, like, most of the time it's blue, because you're creating, like, a sky or something like that. And I'm going to add lots of water to my watercolor. So a key concept is that you want to add lots of water to it. And then, just like we learned in the watercolor tips and tricks video, you are going to paint, and you're going to keep that area wet. So I'm going to try to paint around my lines because it's going to bleed if I don't. I'm just going to paint and keep the area wet as I paint. Okay. To create a flat wash. And this is really good for backgrounds. And I'm just going to leave it alone. After that, I'm going to actually add a flat wash to my layering and my glazing, because I'm going to need them. I need flat washes to start both of these processes. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to come in and I'm going to do a flat wash for my layering and for my glazing. That's why I put them all together. And then we'll come back to these in a second. All right. And then I have to let those dry before I do anything with them. So a flat wash is basically just one layer of one color, and then we're gonna come back to these in a little bit because they've got to dry. Okay. We're then going to move on to wet on wet. Okay, and this one we have to move fast. So I'm gonna write that down over here. This is a fast technique. You've got to work fast with it. So I'm going to put down basically kind of like a flat wash, but with more color. So I'm going to add in more of this blue. And again, I'm going to make sure I have lots of water. So add more color, add more water. And then I'm also going to mix a second color because I want to, as you're doing this, you're mixing a wet color on top of a wet color. So let's do a green over here. I'm just gonna add some more water to that one. Okay. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna paint, actually I'm just gonna paint with this green, starting with that. And I'm gonna add this wet color, and before it dries, I'm gonna add in some blue. This isn't spreading as well as I'd hoped, but there it goes. The colors usually spread so that you kind of create stuff that's faded on top of other colors. Okay. It's super fun, especially in large areas. So you're adding wet paint on top of wet paint. And you want to do different colors. A salt resist also needs to be fast because you're basically going to do wet on wet and then put some salt on it super fast. And it creates a, I don't know, people like to use it for like starry skies. So it creates a resist with salt, and that ends up creating like a starry effect. You can use it for other things, but that's like the primary reason. So we're gonna do that, and it works best with darker colors. So I'm gonna bring in like a really dark blue, maybe some violet here. You can do it with lighter colors, but it's harder to see. And again, you need a lot of water. I'm just gonna add in my color, and then I'm gonna drop some salt right on top of it. So you gotta have the salt ready to go before you start this. And then I'm just gonna leave it alone. You have to let this one dry naturally, or else you'll blow the salt away and it doesn't work. So now that those have happened, I'm gonna come back to my layering and my glazing. So layering is basically just layering flat washes on top of each other to get darker colors on their own. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add more water back into my blue that I just made earlier. And then I'm just going to paint a layer on top of that. Right? So layering is basically adding a wash of the same color multiple times. And this helps you create like the effect of like where you have mountains receding in the background, and they get lighter and lighter and lighter when you're creating aerial perspective. We'll talk more about that one later, but this has a really cool effect. And then glazing is a lot like layering, but this time you're using different colors. So adding different colors on top of other colors. Yeah. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna like choose like maybe green. That might go well with that. I'm gonna bring in my green. And again, you don't wanna overdo it. You just wanna like create just a little bit, right? But that is the effect that you're going for. And so you get like colors that show up behind this color because you're creating like a glaze on top of it. And so that works really well, especially if you want to kind of show a color behind a color. So these are your watercolor notes for day one. On the back of this paper, so you're gonna let it dry. You're gonna let the salt resist kind of finish drying. Once it's done, you can rub the salt back off, and it will look a lot like this. So you have basically like a speckled effect, right? A starry speckled effect. I'm gonna let this one dry, but on the back side of this, what you are going to do is the following. So after drying, paint a picture using at least 4 of these techniques. Okay, so if there's one that isn't really like catching your eye and you're like, this is okay, then you can skip that one. And that's it. That's Watercolor Notes Day 1.